So in this video, I want to show you a small trick, as always. And this is more like an extension of my already shown trick by balancing the audio with the FX3 in Bitwig Studio. But I recently downloaded this free plugin by Robert, who is a great open source developer. And he made an 5-band splitter basically as a VST3 plugin, also available as a clap plugin. And I want to show you with this small loop here. It sounds like this. How you can balance this pretty easily and make it quite nicely balanced and also pretty loud with multiband limiting. I don't limit really, it's more like balancing, but I'll show you in a minute. So I have here this XO plugin that does the drums, and you can see I have here transient control on it with a slightly bumped up sustain. So I get all these in-between sounds and noises out there, and it sounds more glued together. And I have a peak limiter here at the end, and it doesn't limit really, it's more like normalization. So you can see here it's barely peaking. So it's just scratching basically here the threshold. The same for the bass. I have here just a normal polysynth by Bitwig Studio playing a bass sound. And at the end you have a peak limiter also barely scratching the surface here of the threshold. So it's not about limiting or changing basically the dynamics of the sound. It's more like normalization, peak normalization. And also here the polysynth, which plays the pad sound. I think there's no limiter at all. It's just, you know, I'd use in volume that's, I think it's appropriate. Also on the master here, there's just a peak limiter. The whole master is basically also just peaking at the threshold. So no limiting at all. And if I have here this dB meter, and we can see how loud this is here, and just push reset. So we have minus 12.1 LUFS short-term loudness max. And we want to see how far we can get this with this crossover plugin. So instead of the limiter here, I'm putting this into an FX layer converted to FX selector, so we can basically switch between different versions. So I'm inserting here the crossover plugin. By the way, I linked this in the description, of course, so you can download it for yourself and try it out. So we switch to crossover here. And with crossover, you can choose how many bands you want. I choose here 5. And you can also change the crossover frequencies if you want to. And you have to open up here the multi-output and add missing chains. And you get now the void, band 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this is how it sounds now. By the way, this is only drums here. So we have the drums now here separated into 5 bands. And on each band I put a peak limiter and just increase the input until we scratch the threshold again. So this is the bass. And I put this here in the next band. Only scratching here the threshold. I don't want to limit this at all. It's not about getting dynamics out there. It's more like EQing. And it doesn't work with all sounds. You have, of course, to use sounds that have frequency content in all bands. So here you get the heads pretty loud, top end, but it's really important also for drum and bass to get this right. You can see here some of the hi-hats are getting not really near the threshold, so you can see you have problems there in this band, maybe with the dynamics. We can choose here if you want to go more into the limiter and compress the hi-hats a bit more. So now that we have this, we have now a limiter in all these bands here. You can already hear it sounds pretty clean. And at the end here, there's also a small little arrow on the right side where you can put something on the sum of all of these bands. So we can go here also for peak limiter. You can see we are going straight into the threshold here because we normalize basically all the peaks here in all bands. Of course, the sum of this is even louder, so we go straight into the threshold here, 6 dB. So, but instead of using a peak limiter, I'm using a hard clip because we have drums, and drums love love clipping, of course. So we go straight into the hard clip here, and I don't change the input value. It's just, you know, cutting off everything above 0 dB. So we don't have any limiting here at all. Instead of this, we have this. Sounds much cleaner. And you can choose if you want to go more into the limiter here. If you like a more distorted sound. But I want to just keep it at 0 dB. I just want to cut off everything above 0 dB. So now that we have this, we can now make a comparison between these two. So this is just only a limiter here. And this is then here the crossover, when I switch it over. So you can hear it's much brighter. And with drum bass, sometimes you want exactly that. You want to have, you know, pretty neutral, balanced spectrum. So you can do this with this crossover plugin pretty easily without, you know, going to the EQ and EQing all the time. You just put a limiter on there and you are sure that it's not above this threshold. So now that we have this, we do the same here with the bass. So put this in FX layer, convert to FX selector. And we bring in here crossover, switch on 5 bands, add missing chains. Of course, we can also save this as a preset, but just for the sake of this tutorial, do it here manually. So bring on the bass. You can see we have a lot of fluctuation here because I'm using, of course, unison here. Basically the same frequencies, 2 oscillators playing the same frequency, slightly offset with the pitch, which brings in a lot of movement in the bass. But I kind of like the sound, so I can decide here if I want to push it more into the limiter or not. I think it's okay straight here. So second band. And you can already see here the problem with this method, because some of these bands are not active at all, because the bass is just playing the low octaves. So it's more like an EQ, and you have to decide what you want to push and what you want to leave as how it is. Peak. This band, let's see. But I kind of like the sound, how it brings out now. It's more like not really mixing and mastering, it's more like sound designing at this stage here. And here you can see in band 4 and 5, nothing really happens. You can see if it sounds good or not. Oh yeah, bring it out. Okay, so in the end here, we just use a limiter, of course. Bring down the loudness. So this is how it sounds with the crossover, and then I switch here over to the peak limiter so you can hear how it sounds before. Much different sound. So now that we have this here in the polysynth, I also draw in here minus 3 dB because I know it's like now the bass is exactly 3 dB quieter than the drums, because the drums peaking exactly at 0 dB here. Oh yeah, what we can do is we can use here the globals modulator and say fill. And the same here for the polysynth. So we can switch between the different versions just with a click. Globals, fill, modulate. Okay. So this is the newer, the bright version, the brighter version. And polysynth, we just leave it as it is, because I don't want to, yeah, change the sound too much. And it's just a pad sound I want to put into the mix. So now we have this, we go to the master here, do the same trick again. Put this into FX layer, convert to FX selector, use a crossover plugin, switch this over. Use globals, use fill, modulate this, so we can switch between. Then we switch to 5 bands here and add missing chains, peak limiter, and then the same again. I have to even reduce here a bit the input. You can see minus 1 dB. I just want to balance it out. Not about limiting. Same here with this one. Also here. Now that we have this, we can put here also in the end again a limiter. Okay, that's way too much, so we use a hard clip. Maybe minus 1 dB. This is before. It's maybe too bright, but for now we just leave it at that. Reset this here. So just with balancing the frequency content and making sure that nothing goes above 0 dB, we are already here at minus 8.6 LUFS loudness instead of minus 12 we had before. Just only balancing the frequency content. It's not much clipping and limiting going on the channels, besides maybe on the drums here. But we also can push this here a bit further if we want to. Maybe go back to 0 here. And we can reduce here a bit of these mid bands, because usually you don't want to have so much mid-frequency content here for the bass. But this track is pretty empty. It's just drums and a bass and the pad sound. So it's, you have to fill it somehow with some content. So I guess it's okay. You also can use here maybe something like a soft clipper here. Maybe the pad sound is not the best. Something like this. And then when you have this, you can step in and make some creative decisions. Maybe you don't want it to have it that bright, so you lower some of the volume of the higher frequencies to make it not that harsh. But it's a quick way of making things loud and balanced and bright. And for drum bass or for some dance floor stuff, it's pretty easy to do. And of course, with this crossover plugin here, it's quite easy. So this one is free. It also works, of course, in other DAWs because it's a VST. And then you put some limiters on there, or maybe a clipper like I did here, and have some fun. Okay, I just wanted to show you this. So thanks for Robert for programming this and making it open source. And yeah, leave a like if you like the video. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.